Hello and welcome to Behind the Sounds. I'm here today with the legend, that is Barry Dean. Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Good, thank you. I saw you wince when I said legend, but you are a legend.
I understand it.
But yeah, how are things?
They're good. Things are very good. We have good weather and sunshine so we can get outside. That helps.
Yeah, definitely. Still cooped up. Have you been writing a lot and working kind of through it all?
I've been writing, but not as heavily as normal. Normally we're in most days writing and having fun, but in this case, two things. I had started a little company with my brother that helps with wheelchairs and making them smarter and safer. And so I had already planned on taking, kind of slowing down through the spring, didn't know what we were in for. And so I'm writing once or twice a week, and I think last Monday I wrote with Brothers Osborne, and this Friday, tomorrow I write with Tennille Townes and Laurie McKenna. So I get to write with such great people. It's kind of like Christmas when I do it.
Yeah, amazing. And you've had so many hits over the years, which we will dive into a little bit more. But I read something, and I just want to know if it's true, and I want to know how it happened. But when you started songwriting, is it true you went on a songwriter's cruise that your wife sent you?
That's true. That's true.
How did that
Yeah.
come about? I've heard of them, but I've never spoken to anyone that's been on one.
Well, the Nashville Songwriters Association, which I didn't know about really at that point when this all happened. I was living in a little town in Kansas called Pittsburgh, Kansas, and I had a job working at an education curriculum company. And we were considering, should I switch jobs or go to this other company? And Jennifer, my wife, she said, what's your passion? And I laughed. And she was like, why are you laughing? I said, well, that's not how we're going to make this decision. We just need to make smart choices here. She kept pushing me. Finally, I admitted that when I was young, I'd wanted to be a songwriter. And so she went and found this Nashville Songwriters Association. And I think they did two of them, maybe three total ever. And they did this cruise. I think this was the second one. And so they had a little faculty. It was like Angela Cassett, who's amazing, and Ralph Murphy, God rest his soul, and James Dean Hicks, and Craig Wiseman, and Hugh Prestwood, amazing Hugh Prestwood. And so there was a great little group of writers, Steve Seskin. And so she didn't tell me though. She just came to me and said, will you take me on a cruise for our anniversary? And I said, yes. And then she said, this is the one. And she had found this cruise. And so we went, and I sat in the back of the room, and everybody else was really confident and playing their songs. And I was just taking notes and learning and listening, And so I don't think they may have done one the next year, but after that, I don't think they did any more. And so I feel really lucky that I got to do that.
Yeah. And did you move to Nashville after that? You kind of thought, right, did it solidify?
It was a long time. It was a couple of years later, because we did the cruise, and at the end of the cruise, a couple of the pros asked to hear a couple songs, and so I played a song, and they said, you should come next month. We're doing a thing in Nashville. So I did that, and we started making these trips, and we did that for a couple of years, and then I got signed to BMG. And I still stayed in Kansas and kept making trips, which at that time was pretty weird. I mean, there were a few people like Steve Seskin and Hugh Prestwood and Laurie McKenna that did that, but very few people did that. A couple people came from LA. It was a much more Nashville-centric town, and than it is now. And so then I got a cut after I'd been signed about 6 months or a year with Martina, and Reba also cut a different song. And so then the decision was, do we move to Nashville or not? And that's when we did it. So it was probably a good 4 years or something like that after the cruise that we moved, 3 or 4. So.
Yeah. and not many people can say that their first cuts were Martina McBride and Reba McEntire. What
No,
was that
no,
like? Because that was at kind of the very peak of both of their careers as well.
that's right.
What was
That's
that
right.
like, getting them cuts?
Well, the Reba one was a song that was really sad. It has no chorus. The structure is crazy. It was really just, I didn't think anyone would ever hear it. I wrote it personally for me. And then this new publisher I had heard it on accident. It was an accident, and went, wait, what's that? And he took it and played it for her. And then she was like, I'm cutting it. And I couldn't believe it because it broke all the rules of what I was, the rules, that you follow the rules. And it was crazy. It had 3 first verses, a bridge, and a last verse. And it was the craziest song in the world, but it worked. That opened the door for me to write because of that song. That opened the door for me to write with Tom Douglas, who is, one of the great, he's Hall of Fame songwriter. And so then we wrote God's Will, and then Martina cut it, and that was a huge deal. I mean, for me, I was still living in Kansas, and she's on the CMAs singing this song, and that was a real, that was a moment for me and Jan and our family. Was just like, this is pretty crazy, right? We might be able to get to try to do something like this. So it seemed very crazy to think you could get to do it.
Yeah, amazing.
So.
From then on, it just kind of skyrocketed for you. I mean, there isn't many artists in Nashville you haven't written for. Is there any kind of songs, I will talk about more so from like Pontoon onwards, but in them years you wrote songs with Carrie Underwood and Alison Krauss and Sarah Evans. You had hit a lot of kind of hits over the years. Did it just feel like I'm on a roll, or was it still a slug?
Truthfully, it felt pretty terrifying. When we moved to Nashville, everybody was so great, such great songwriters and musicians. And I really felt, not quite as qualified. And when I first came to town, before any of that had happened, I was kind of weird. I was from out of town. I was older. I was a piano player. So I, 3 strikes already. And but then after that, then I had met some great friends, and they were writing with me, and we were becoming, sort of, because you kind of do that. You kind of find your people among this tribe, and so that was that process. The first, I would say 3 years we were here, I probably wrote too much. I did at least 2 a days, 5 or 6 days a week. I mean, I really kind of panicked, if you want to know the truth. There's so much to learn. There's so many people to write with. There's so much to do. And I probably took that too far. But somewhere, maybe 3, 4 years in, somewhere right in there, we had a Carrie Underwood cut, and that helped a lot. And then we had these other songs that were kind of strange, like the Alison Krauss song happened, and I had a weird, like a Meatloaf cut, and just like strange, but I was just, somehow I was, thankfully was able to stay in, and publishers and pluggers would keep supporting me, and writers would keep writing with me. And then finally we kind of hit a groove, and we had Pontoon and some other songs. And so then it felt like, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
but the first few years, it really, I mean, and I've seen a lot of other writers come and deal with that since. And I think that first couple of years is kind of hard. You try to encourage them not to wear themselves out so they're burnt out, or they don't like co-writing, or, you go easy, write by yourself. Because I wrote by myself, and I wrote a very small number of songs per year as compared to, other writers, and all of a sudden I'm writing, hundreds of times a year. And that was too big of a shock to my system. But then once I started sort of changing how I wrote, and learning, kind of figuring out, what you're really doing, I think, is learning to trust your own voice a little bit inside of you. I mean, I was really afraid to sing or play or even throw ideas in a co-writing room, because I hadn't done a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so I would write at the top of my notepad, make a noise, you know, because I'd realized I'd been sitting there trying to make sure I had the right answer before I spoke. And it was a couple of years before I really started to go, oh, uh, I should just say what I'm thinking, and trust that those other collaborators, they're going to do the same thing, and we're going to be on each other's side. You
Yeah.
know, it's not a competition; it's a collaboration.
Yeah, and you talk about your tribe and the people around you, and then obviously you mentioned Pontoon. So you wrote that song with Luke Laird and Natalie Hemby, who you've
Yeah,
worked with a lot over the years. So I'm assuming a kind of part of your tribe. A huge song. It was Little Big Town's first number one, a massive hit, Grammy winning. Can you just dive into the story of that song? Because am I right in saying there's something to do with the Miranda Lambert hit?
that's yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
So so I had written with Luke, and Luke and I were good friends. Then Luke introduced me to Natalie Hemby because they had started writing, and we quickly became, you know, inseparable, you know, as a little group, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think Pontoon was the first song the three of us ever wrote together. We had been around each other a few times, but we hadn't written a song together. She had switched publishers, but was still talking to her old publisher. And, you know, it's any relationship that's business. There's good days and bad days. Well, this was one of those bad days. So Luke and I were sitting in this room over at Universal, room 8, and she came in and she was kind of not pleased. And she said, I just talked to this person, you know, you know, she had a song called, what was her song called? I'm trying to remember the Miranda song.
Fine Tune.
Fine Tune. Fine Tune. She wrote it with Luke,
Mhm.
and it compares the you know, the dating or lovemaking to, sorry about the noise there, to going to an auto garage. So she goes, yeah, they congratulated us on our cut, but they called it Pontoon. And she was a little put out. And so then, you know, Luke and I are like, you know, we kind of see this redneck angels, you know, we're like, oh, and I think there's no question she saw it too, but she was making a different point. And so she's like, we're not, no. And so Luke starts playing the groove, and so she, you know, he can talk her into stuff. So he'd be like, come on, girl, tell me what you, come on. And I'm just like playing some mini moog, want to be Prince bass to that. And somewhere in there, she goes with the back, this hitch up into the water.
Mhm.
And I think I threw the AstroTurf, and we're all laughing. We write a little of that verse, and we write just a teeny bit of the chorus, and then we decide we'll do lunch.
Mhm.
And Lori McKenna tells the story that because she was in room 7 that day,
Mhm.
and we're really good friends, so she's in there. And that day she wrote with a little group that's not around anymore, and she says it was one of the worst writes she's ever had. The band members were fighting with each other and
Oh
yelling at
no.
each other. And so she said the worst part of it was me knocking on the door, coming in, going, "Hey, you want us to get you any lunch? We're going to get some lunch. You want me to bring you some lunch?" And she was like, "I hear you laughing next door. Oh my gosh, you won't believe this song that we're writing. It's hilarious." And she's having this horrible day, and I'm like, "Oh, we're having a great time. Let me get you some lunch." So we tell the story. I've heard the story told by Luke and by me and by Natalie, and it's been told so many ways. And now I don't even know which way is accurate, but I believe that what happened was we had that much and we stopped for the day, and that about 7 months later, um, it was Luke's birthday. And so Natalie and I got him a funny gift to give him. And so when she came over to surprise Luke with the birthday gift at his writing room, I brought this back up, and Luke was in on it. And we got Natalie to sit down and finish the song and sing the vocal, which is critical because Natalie's such an amazing singer and interpreter of songs. And she was like 100 months pregnant with Sammy, her daughter. So I think she had Sammy the next week, maybe, or two
Wow.
weeks later. But we recorded that little song, and then, you know, and then nothing happened with it for a long time. I don't know if you have heard that, but they sent it to, I think they sent it to Dirk Bentley. I don't know that for sure, and I think he did not like that. And they sent it to Kix Brooks, and he sent a lovely email about how funny it was, but he would never record it. And then it sort of went into the song protection program, like it just dropped into the bucket. And then it was probably 2 or 3 years. I'm going to say 2, but it may have been more. That it was just sitting there. And then when Luke and Beth started Creative Nation, and I was one of the first writers there, founding writer. Beth, in the first meeting for the new company, the first song she played was that song, and it was to the manager of Little Big Town, and that's what started it finding its place, which was amazing. And you know, Jay Joyce made it so cool, and Jay and Jed Hughes, the brilliant Jed Hughes, they made that little riff, that little thing. That's them, you know. And so and Luke Laird played electric guitar on the session, so he's on the actual single.
Ah, there you go. I did not know that fact.
Yeah. So
such a cool story. And it was, I mean, obviously Little Big Town were well known at the time, but it really did skyrocket them to just another level. But what I want to know, who came up with Motorboating?
Oh yeah. Well, there's been some debate. Normally, when Natalie or Luke are talking, they'll say I did to embarrass me. But I really don't remember. But I cannot imagine it was me. I would have to think that sounds so much like Luke and Natalie Hemby, and it could be either one. I just know we were trying to, to find humor and find something that would rhyme. And the other thing that's funny about that song now is, the line before that is out here in the open motorboating. And but what happens is a lot of times when we would play the Bluebird back when we used to do shows and fundraisers, people sing ocean.
Yeah.
And so if you sing open, the ocean people all stop and they don't get to have the motorboating fun because they're going, you messed it up. And so we have taken, at least Luke and I, to backing out of the mic and not even saying that word, because it throws off both sides of the audience, right? If you open, then the ocean people are confused. If you ocean, the open people wonder what's going on. And so it's one of those cases where the song ends up being, it's a Little Big Town song now, and it's the listener gets to own it. And and Little Big Town, they're phenomenal, of course, and they're amazing people. But it is interesting because they had been around about 12 years, I believe. And it's hard to believe that they hadn't had more number ones, but like Boondocks didn't quite get there, and Little White Church didn't quite get there. And those songs are huge, but they just didn't do it. So to be a part of their first number one, and it was my first number one, and it was Luke Laird's 10th number one.
Wow.
So pretty amazing.
Yeah. And a bit of a full circle moment I want to mention. When Little Big Town got inducted to the Opry, Reba came on singing that song. Was that for you quite cool? Because obviously you go from her being one of your first cuts and then her singing your first number one however many years later. Was that quite a cool moment to witness?
It's funny you should. I mean, no one has ever brought that up, but yes, my wife and I were watching that and were really moved. It was really emotional, and I was backstage when they were inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, and it was just it was overwhelming, because you think, wow, that's amazing that I'm even here. I mean, I moved to Nashville, I was 38. That's pretty late to get started in a career like this, and for the writers and the town to let me in, and then to have Reba, and Reba is class. I mean, she is. I don't think you can find anybody in this town that doesn't adore her and respect her. And I wouldn't want to meet them if they didn't feel that way. And so I mean, she really. And so that was just a really cool thing. And those, I gotta say, the Little Big Towners, they're cut from the same cloth. They're so great. And I shouldn't probably tell this, but it's true. When I see Jimmy from Little Big Town, especially, I say it to the others too, but especially when I see Jimmy, we always give each other a hug. I don't know what we'll do after this COVID thing, but if we still hug, but I always hug. And when we hug, I always whisper in his ear, "Thank you for my career." And he always laughs and punches me. And But it's true. I mean, you have a number one song, it opens other doors for you and other opportunities. And so, yeah, I'll always have a real soft spot for, Reba and Martina, and then for Little Big Town with the first number one.
Yeah. And it did, like, it did kind of, things from there just went crazy, I suppose.
Yeah.
So many hits, Jason Aldean, Blake Shelton, all these kind of hits that just popped up all over the place.
Wow.
But then a few years later, you had probably another one of the biggest hits of your career with Tim McGraw, Diamond Rings and Old Bar Stools, which was Grammy nominated for you guys. Obviously, Pontoon won for Little Big Town, but this one was actually the songwriters nomination. So again, can you give me a bit of backstory on that song, because it's one of my personal Tim McGraw favorites, but what was that like?
Thank you. I wrote it with John Singleton. Jonathan is amazing, and has an incredible voice, and Luke Laird, of course. And that was a day where we had worked on something else most of the day, and it was maybe around 3:00. And we kind of had realized that what we were trying to do, we had set out to write a tempo song for Rascal Flatts. That was the goal. Mm-hmm. And somewhere around 3:00, we realized the thing we were writing was, it was a tempo, but it was not of the quality that was going to work for Rascal Flatts, and we weren't really sure about it. But we had a little time, and we love being together, and we love writing songs. So we started talking about country songs, and we talked a little bit about nouns, and how there's country songs, a lot of times the title will be an actual thing.
Yeah.
And then we also started talking about, country and Western, the idea of the way country used to sound, less pop, more Western. And Luke started playing that riff that's in the song, and I think he threw out Diamond Rings, and I don't know if he or John Singleton said Bar Stools, and off we went. And that song was written probably in 30 or 40 minutes. At the end of a day of working on something and not being able to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And then, we were happy, but there weren't a lot of places to go. We didn't think. We thought, George Strait was probably the only shot. Either Luke or I, one of us, had a session the next day. Singleton was out of town, so we decided to put it on the session so we could hear John Singleton sing it, because we knew it'd be amazing just to hear him sing that song, and so we demoed it, and John sang it, and then they sent it to George Strait's people, and it kind of made its way through the process. In fact, there was even, it's down in the studio, and he may cut it, and so we kind of crossed our fingers, but then he didn't cut it, and we really thought at that time, where's it going to go, because if you look back at when Diamond Rings happened, it was still pretty fully pop. There wasn't as much, John Party and Morgan, and there's been people who've opened that lane back up, mm-hmm. And but at the time it wasn't really as open, and so we kind of thought that's the end of that game. And then I don't remember exactly, but I think that Beth Laird and Jeff Skaggs in our office pitched that for McGraw. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's right. And we couldn't believe it. And then McGraw put it out, and it was a big deal. And McGraw, he's known for his song selection. I mean, if you think about his career, it's a pretty amazing catalog of songs and songwriters that have written those. And so we were thrilled. And then Luke and I got to go to the Grammys, which was a blast because we have fun together, and we were there. Laurie McKenna, that's the year she won her first Grammy. We knew that she was going to win that thing, and we were happy we could be there to hug her and cheer her on. We all sat together.
Yeah, because she's Creative Nation too, isn't she? So yeah. I was going to ask that. I mean, obviously it's a little bit bittersweet because you didn't win, but I imagine seeing someone who you've worked with and who you're so close to winning is kind of just as good.
Oh yeah, you know, everybody wants to win one of those things, but I mean, Lori's like a sister to me, and so we just adore her and Jean and the kids, and in fact, the morning of that, my wife had helped me, and I had gotten a print of a picture of Clarence Clemens, the big man, with Bruce Springsteen, and they're holding hands and spinning around on stage, and he's wearing a shiny red suit, Clarence is, and Boss looks like the boss, and so I got that picture, and I wrote on the glass. An arrow to Clarence Clemens that said, "This is me," and an arrow to Bruce Springsteen that said, "This is you." You have no idea how much fun it is to be next to you.
Oh,
And so we were thrilled, and you know, again, and now Luke's won a couple of Grammys, two or three, I'm not sure, and Lori has certainly won. I'll say a baker's dozen of them, but not really. But I'll just make her feel bad about it. She'll give me a hard time. But I haven't won one, so maybe someday I'll do that. But it really was just a joy to be a part of it.
yeah. And it's such an incredible song to have on that list. And it was a tough year. There were some amazing songs that year.
It's always
Um,
it's always that way.
yeah,
And you know, they always say, you know, it's an honor to be nominated, and that is true. I'm not saying people aren't competitive in Nashville, because we all are, but there is a certain gratitude that you get to be a part of it, and that, you know, how is that even possible that we get to do that? You know, I mean, to write songs and go be a part of that, and you know, and to have Jen there, my wife, and go have fun with my best friend Luke, and you know, I mean, it's
yeah,
pretty great, you know.
it's awesome. And you just mentioned this guy, but this is someone I really want to talk about. John Pardy, who I know
Yeah.
worked with. I have a picture and an image in my head of just how cool he is in person
Hmm.
and what he's like to work with. You had the title track of his album, Heartache
Yeah.
Medication. Again, number one, Natalie Hemby again. All these
Yeah.
things coming into play, and you
As
wrote
my
it.
secret weapon. Yeah. Natalie Hemby and Luke Laird and Lori Young. I try to, yeah, it's always the same secret weapon,
And they could say
right?
the same about you. So firstly, what's he like as a person to write with? Because he'd had an incredible few years when that song came out, and that song just took over and was amazing, and as you said, was kind of old school country.
Yeah, twin fiddles. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's he like, and what was that song like to write?
Well, I had written with Luke Laird and him on the record before. We had a song called Paycheck,
Hmm.
and and so I can only compare that and Heartache Medication. Those are the only two songs I had written with him to that point. Now I've written with him since, but I would say, first of all, he is exactly who who you think he is. I
Yeah,
mean, he's not pretending, he's not acting, he's not, you know what I mean? He's just really who he is. He's a hardworking dude. He's a lot of fun. He's a straight shooter,
hmm,
and he lives and dies this stuff. He loves country music, and man, he is. So it's fun to be around him because he knows exactly who he is, and he knows what he's trying to do, and he knows what he wants to do, and he's having a really good time doing that. And so it's really an amazing experience. He's also a guy who will stand up in the writing room, and you know, he's thinking of his fans. He's thinking of him. You know, what am I here for? You know, that's a pretty interesting thing about him, is he respects and understands his fans
yeah,
so much, and his sort of meter for what's real and what's not, and what passes muster, if you will, is really finely tuned. You know, he knows his people, and but writing with him both those times, those particular times, was a riot. You laugh the whole time,
hmm,
and it's fast. He's a brilliant writer. He's very fast, and like on Heartache Medication, he'll break a structure. He'll put the title halfway through the chorus,
hmm,
you know, because that's where he wants it.
yeah,
You know, so like I think in Heartache Medication, the title's in line 3 and line 7 or something. I mean, it's like no one would do it that way except John Party,
yeah,
and he makes it work. And of
hmm,
course, I love his voice. I love, you know, I love that whole record, you know, Ryan Gore worked with John and Bart, I think, on that record, this newest record. And I will say that about John Party. I find myself, just as a fan of music, putting on his album. You know, you think there's some artists that you put the album on because it creates an energy and a mood, and it feels great. Even when, you know, it's sad, it feels great. When it's happy, it feels great.
Yeah.
And he makes those kinds of complete albums. And that's one thing I love about him, and I think his fans do too. So yeah. He's great.
And he puts on such a show, and I love that you say that that's where he goes to in the studio, because you watch videos of him live and it's just a ball. Everyone's having such fun. So it's really interesting that you say that he brings that into the studio with him.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the day we wrote Heartache Medication, Natalie, I guess it's okay to tell us, Natalie, she's in the Highwaymen, and so they were just getting started. They were just starting, they were recording, they were starting to do these things. So they'd had some big event the night before. So she was slightly, she was hungover. She was slightly hungover. Yeah. And so she's already like, you know, sunglasses on and yoga pants so she's sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor over here. He's standing here with his guitar, just rocking. And I'm just trying to type and record and throw things. And there, you know, the song happened again very quickly. That Heartache Medication song was written so fast.
Yeah.
And that's just who he is. And I think he left, drove to his property, and I think he had just gotten a bulldozer. And so he was going to go out and work on the land that afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, and that's exactly, you know, when you see that stuff, what he does, where he's like, you can come out and drive on this, or you can come out and we're going to drive Jeeps. That's who he is. That is exactly who he is. So I kind of love that about him, you know, the purity of it.
Yeah. And that's exactly how I picture him. And as you were just saying, he's exactly how you think he's going to be. So that's really, really awesome. And then someone else who I know you've worked with quite a lot, I know you mentioned how you're going to write with her this week. Tenille Townes, you had a big part of her album. She has just won the ACM for New Artist of the Year today, which is amazing, so well deserved. I know you've written quite a few songs with her and obviously continue to do it. Again, can you tell me a little bit about that relationship there and how these songs and that relationship's come about?
Well, when she first came to town, very quickly she was signed at Sony. I think very quickly they saw her as this fresh, unique voice for our format. And so then we were summoned to their headquarters at RCA, Sony, to meet her and listen to her. And so we went up. It was just a little conference room, and she played a few songs and just leveled us. I think it was me and Natalie and Luke. There may have been one other, maybe like Steve Mokler or someone else, but it was, you know, you're just stunned.
Yeah.
And she was, you know, I don't know how I honestly got in the room. I think she was really a big fan of Laurie McKenna's, and I had helped with producing the Lorraine album for Laurie and writing a lot of that. And so anyway, I got to meet her, and then Luke and I wrote with her, and I think we only wrote twice for the record. But that song, you know, she came in, and she had been driving around Nashville with her mother and seen someone and already had a lot of those thoughts, you know, that are in the verse and chorus. And then we really just ran alongside her and started, you know, trying to be helpful and useful. And you know, sometimes as a collaborator, sometimes part of your job is to just let people know that what they're doing is wonderful. Because I think sometimes, you know, someone as creative as Tenille, she'll do something new or break a rule, or it'll be a little slightly to the side. And so there's a little voice that goes, oh, that doesn't sound like what I'm used to hearing on the radio. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes Luke Laird and I, in those situations with an artist, will find ourselves really encouraging them and going, no, this is what you're doing. Is you. It's so unique, it's so specific, and it's so magical. we don't want to be the people that dim the uniqueness of the artist. We want to elevate it. I want to set that diamond in something so everybody can see it, right?
Mm.
And I do remember us talking about the lemonade stand. You know, I was really moved by that line. And sometimes Tennille says I wrote that line. I thought she wrote that line, but I will tell you, as far as I'm concerned, it's all her. And but to me, that was such a uh, it was a physical moment, but it was a moment that broke your heart a little bit, you know, because you could see the humanity inside that situation. And I think that's true of all her songs. You think of Jersey on the Wall,
Yeah.
she gets you in next to and in that experience at a very human level. You can almost sort of feel the skin of people in her songs. And so, so she's really an amazing writer. We just wrote a couple weeks ago, and I saw, you know, this, we saw that she had just won this great award and deserved it. So we just texted her before I talked to you, and all that, sent over some stuff. So just to say, way to go, because it's, you know, she won the CCMA Songwriter of the Year award. I got to, you know, we got to share in that, Luke and I, because of her in Canada last year. And this year, I think she's nominated 7 times in that area. And so I've been teasing her that they're going to start calling that award the Tennille. And so, but she'll not like that joke. But I've been teasing her. You know, the other thing I would say just about that song, it was written as a ballad.
Really?
When we first wrote it, it was very slow. And then she and her producer, Jay Joyce, they reshaped that and gave it that drive. And I think that's such a genius move, because it let everybody inside the story. I think some people tune out if it's too slow or whatever, they'll kind of tune it out. But because it had the groove and the sonics, I think it was able to penetrate hearts more, you know. And I know Luke feels the same way. We feel really grateful that we're on it, and you know, it's rare you have an artist like that shows up first record, at least first on a major in the US, kind of fully formed. You know, normally it takes a while to find their way, you know, but she really just showed up ready to rumble.
Yeah, and she's got one of them voices, hasn't she? You can just recognize it anywhere. So I can imagine being in the studio and you kind of seeing it on paper and then hearing it come out of her voice must just feel kind of amazing, because it's such a unique and incredible voice.
Yes, it can become this very soft, tender thing, but it can also kind of be this angry rage. I mean, it has a scope to it that's not common. And I would say this, you know, not meaning any disrespect, but I think if you look at the female country artists, there is the one thing they all have in common is there is a uniqueness to them. They are particular beings. It's not homogenous. It's not all the same. It's not, you're not going, which one is that? They're particular voices, and you can identify them in seconds, and they're very powerful, and they're great writers. All of them are. I'm trying, but I can't think of one that's not a great writer. I mean, they write great songs. You think of Maren Morris, you think of Carrie, and you think of Miranda, and I mean, it just keeps going, right? You know, you're just like, wow. So
amazing. And I mean, I could talk about songs that you've written for hours, because there are so many I'd like to dive into, but I'm gonna have to wrap things up a little bit now. But I do have 3 questions that I ask everyone. There's 3 questions. So my first question for you, it's a little bit off tangent, but can you name 3 songs that you wish you'd have written?
Oh yeah, boy, there's millions of them. I wish. I'm just overwhelmed with songs right now in my head, and I'm sure some of these you've heard before. There's a song called "I Need You" by Tony Lane that was recorded by Tim and by Faith Hill. and that song levels me. I cannot process it. And I'm trying to think of some, because I'm guessing most people say, I Can't Make You Love Me If You Don't, House That Built Me, and I love all these songs. You know, the song Remembers When. Those are all great choices. I'm just trying to spread the wealth a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I Need You, Tony Lane wrote that, I think is a masterpiece. I think I have to say, Laurie McKenna, just about anything Laurie has written, but I think Humble and Kind is just the most beautiful prayer I ever heard, you know, and so, you know, I hate to say that because she's going to be get on to me for talking about it, but I remember hearing it the first time. She flown into town and she was playing a little fundraiser gig, and she kind of looked over and said, I'm going to try this new song. And then she played that. And I remember thinking, she is working with a whole extra set of colors of crayons that we don't have. And, or I don't. And so I think that's pretty great. And let's see, golly, there's so many great songs. I just off the top of my head, I'm just going to pick whatever pops into my head here. Gosh, 3 songs I wish I would have written. I think What Hurts the Most just popped into my head, so I'm going to say that. I think that song is pretty amazing, and you know, Jeff Steele, and pretty great. And I just thought of I Know You Won't. Wendell Mobley and Neil Thrasher and Steve McHugh, and that's an amazing song. Gosh, Luke Laird's Give Me Back My Hometown. So yeah, there's several but yeah, those are the songs that come to mind. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I'm not good at that.
Well, I'm going to keep with the 3s, so it might be a bit of pressure.
Okay.
About 3 albums that you couldn't live without as a fan.
Yeah. Well, 3 albums I could. Beatles. Which album? Tough, right? My wife would say the White Album. My daughter, you know, a Beatles record. I would have to have a Beatles record. It'd probably be Revolver, Rubber Soul, and I'm pretty softy, so I might go Abbey Road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd have to have a Beatles record, and I love this record that I don't think anybody else does, but it's Keith Richards' Talk Is Cheap. And I'm not really I was not a Stones guy or any of that, but I heard this record and it really got under my skin. And so I love that. I listened to it a lot. And then probably there would be something that was rock, you know, like probably a Police album. Probably like Synchronicity or Ghost in the Machine, or, you know, probably something like that. But again, I'm not very good at this, because my wife would tell you one of the things that she's not a music person like that is the way I jump between formats, and, you know, I'll go Earth, Wind and Fire to Sting to Peter Gabriel. Actually, Peter Gabriel's So probably would be on that list now that I think about it. So I think those would be the ones I would want to have around.
Yeah. I love that. That's a good range. And then obviously you've worked with so many incredible writers and artists, but can you name 3 people that you haven't yet worked with that are kind of on your bucket list to work with, whether they be writers or producers or artists?
I'd like to write with John Bellion. We got our BMI Pop Awards, first Pop Awards the same year. And so we met each other, but we've never written. And I think what he does is fascinating, you know, just the way he thinks. And we had a mutual friend in Michael Busby. And so I kind of would like to do that. I would love, I have enjoyed writing pop songs, and so I'm excited to try to write with some of the young talent that are over there, and people that I haven't written with, and And some I have, like a Julia Michaels I've written with, but I'd love to write with her again, or Egg White in London. That guy is amazing. So yeah, I would like to do that. And then a third would be, who I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's true. I've never written with Alan Shamblin. Alan wrote I Can't Make You Love Me If You Don't with Mike Reed. He wrote House That Built Me with Tom Douglas. He's written so many great songs. And he's one of my favorite writers. And I know him, and I've met him. And we've even had a dinner we were at together and sat next to each other.
Yeah.
But I was always hesitant to write with him because I just was so intimidated by his, the way he thinks of lyric and how elegant the work is. And so that's truly something on my list that I've made as we go back from this shelter in place, to say, I'd like to go ahead and write with him, because even if I'm the worst writer in the world, I would learn something in that room and have a great experience with a great man. So I think those are my top. I've just made those three up. I thought you were going to ask me what three artists were my favorite that I wrote with. I thought, oh, well, this is going to be
God, you're going to have to answer that question now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's whoever's cutting next. No. I'll say this, and maybe I've just been protected, but I really do believe I've gotten to work with the artists I've worked with have been really wonderful folks. And it's never been, some sort of a problem or a horror story. You're always struck by how graceful they are under a lot of pressure, and how, you think of Thomas Rhett. He is an amazing young man, and Brett Eldridge is the kindest guy. He's just so nice, and all of them. I mean, I could go down the list. I mean, they've been just gentlemen or wonderful ladies, and brilliant people, and so I really haven't had any sort of experience like that. But that struck me, how kind they were, because I thought, boy, there's probably some attitudes. No, not really. I mean, there's a much better chance that I've got a bad attitude than them.
That's fair enough. Well, I'm going to leave you to play us a song, but I want to end by saying thank you so much. It's been absolute pleasure. So many stories, and as I said, I could talk about more songs all day. But thank you so much, and I will leave the floor to you.
All right, I'll sing the Diamond Rings song, if we're still in tune here. Check it. Don't want to offend. Again, if Jonathan Singleton were here, he can sing this so well. But we had worked all day on that other song, and then this happened. And it really was the most unexpected thing we ever had. Thanks for letting me be a part of this. I'm excited for you and for the whole podcast thing to happen.
Thank you.
Diamond rings and old bar stools, one's for queens and one's for fools. One's the future and one's the past. One's forever and one won't last. And it ain't like midnight and cigarette smoke. It ain't like watered down whiskey and coke. No, I guess some things just don't like your hope, like me and you. Diamond rings and old bar stools. The wrongs and rights and the highs and lows. The I love yous and I told you so. The last few miles to wherever's home. Another morning waking up alone. And it ain't like midnight and cigarette smoke. It ain't like watered down whiskey and coke. Well, I guess some things just don't like it, like me